Hi guys. Depending where you are, you may or may not know me, so I'm going to introduce myself quickly. I'm Laura Volpintesta. I'm the founder of Fashion Illustration Tribe and online art and fashion learning. Hi Gigi. I think you're going to love this topic. Today we're going to talk about shadows, not just in art, but in psychology and what do you call it? Spirituality, and how they work and how they are avoided and then how they are embraced and integrated. So where to begin? Okay, I didn't introduce myself much, but since I see people here, I want to get right into the topic. So for years, I created like a gazillion demonstration and instruction videos for fashion illustration, model drawing. I still love to do that, but I found the clients I work with, that stuff is all on videos. It's all in my courses and programs. When we work together, it's mostly about psychology and spirituality and personal truth, manifestation. What do we want to create? Okay, my tripod is seriously teasing me right now. Okay. So, I want to talk about shadows. Last night I was thinking, I said, oh my gosh, this is a great metaphor. Because when I teach fashion illustration, what happens the most often, and also in just all kinds of drawing, when we get to the part where we start to learn how to shade, nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to add shadows to their drawing. Okay, because what happens? They've worked a long time to create this drawing, and then they put all the colors down, and now if they add shadow, it's going to get like 3D. It's going to add movement and depth and richness. But they're afraid they're going to ruin it. And this is just like life. Everything's great. We're optimistic. We're happy. And we're often afraid to look into whatever. For me, okay, shadow used to mean, I didn't even know what it meant. I'm such a like celebratory artist. I'm such an optimistic and happy and uplifting style artist that the word shadow just downright frightened me. I didn't know what it meant. That shadow, now I understand it as to be just the parts of yourself that you disowned. And this is what comes up, because when people are learning art or learning anything, when people are growing, okay, what is healing? What is the reason for being alive? I believe it's to reintegrate all the parts of yourself, to become a whole, not to be at war with yourself. There are not parts of yourself that you reject. You learn to embrace all of them. I feel like that's the journey here, right? We call that the things that we have been taught that are unacceptable or unwanted or undesirable become our shadow self, which is actually, we may be completely unconscious of it because we've rejected all of it. And yet, interesting enough, the parts we rejected start running the show because we need them. We need all the parts of ourselves. There is not parts of ourselves that are fully acceptable and others that are fully unacceptable. Every aspect of ourselves has a positive and a negative, or a shadow and a light aspect. Anger has a shadow aspect and a light aspect. Everything serves us. Anger serves us. Sadness, I'm going to use the ones that are generally considered negative and wrong. Like, they serve us. Sadness, pain, heartbreak, all these emotions actually serve us, as do optimism, joy. The positive ones serve us and can have a detriment. They can have a dark side too, a shadow side. So how does this play out when I use it as a metaphor with drawing and with life? Is that for the students who, usually I'll have them, let's say they're designing a red coat and they sketch the red coat. Then I'll say, okay, take that red. Now we're going to add black to it. We're going to add these large shadow shapes, not little bits of watered down shadow or little tiny lines, but big bold shapes of dark red to create the shadow. People are like, no. 90% of the students will water it down and keep it very subtle and just put a little bit because they're afraid of ruining their drawing and they're afraid of the impact. Thing is, if you don't use the shadow, you don't get the impact. You don't get the prize at the end, the golden prize of having a dynamic, deep, rich drawing that feels real, that feels like you could touch it, that feels like it's coming to life off the paper. Life is like that. If you keep pushing those shadows away because you think they're going to ruin your drawing, ruin your life, ruin your experience, you're actually going to miss the beautiful definition that comes from embracing the whole experience. So it always takes a leap of faith. Every time I do it, it's a leap of faith. I have a pretty good drawing, but I know it's going to be way better when I take the risk and make that bold stroke over it with the paint. And what if I ruin it? What's it going to come out like? Life too. Don't you, like, we want to stay in that safe middle ground. So I'll watch the students who, like, they see the tutorial on how to shade. They're like, okay, but they barely do it. They just don't do it. And so the result is usually a drawing that is more flat looking, more thin looking, has less presence on the page a lot of the time. There's no rules. It's just a metaphor for now, but it's until they take, and I believe safety, a sense of safety, which is what I create with my clients and with my students. If you feel safe enough, you can take that risk without just falling off the cliff. If you feel safe enough to take the risk, you will get the prize that comes from the risk. Maybe you ruin the drawing and then maybe, but you 99% of the time you find it didn't, it only made it better. And that if there was a mistake, you learned from it and applied it to your next drawing, or that it could be tweaked here or there with a colored pencil or another stroke of paint, or that it led to an unexpected surprise that's even better. But when we stay in that back to thinness and flatness, thin, flat comfort zone. This is the range of expression we're allowing ourselves in our drawing, in our art, in our life, in our design, in our business, in our finances, in our relationship. It's going to be uncomfortable to go out of that range, into the shadows, into the unknown, taking a risk, surprising yourself. It takes, you're growing, you're stretching, but you're actually, I always say, okay, there's a big popular word that I always heard in fashion illustration classes and stuff. They talked about exaggerating the figure. We're not exaggerating. When I talk about you stretching your range of expression, you're not stretching. You're actually embracing what's already there. You're taking in your birthright, your truth. When you're in that comfort zone, you're actually under living your experience. You're not tasting all the flavor. You're getting a very thin, very unsatisfying experience. It's an embracing and encompassing and bringing in a wider range of expressions that you get this delicious adventure, this rich experience that makes your heart beat faster and your world shine and come alive. Now wait a second. It really made me think of something I didn't want to lose. So, in fashion, they talk about exaggerating the pose. Put that shoulder up higher, put that hip out farther. But let me tell you, after teaching model drawing for 25 years, I don't need students to exaggerate their drawing. It feels like exaggeration to them. But all they're really doing is telling the truth. The truth is already dramatic and beautiful and dynamic. What they're usually doing is understating the drama. So when I say exaggerate, I'm just trying to get them to reality. Am I making sense? because what they usually do is the pose is like this, and they make it like this. They're not drawing what they see, they're drawing what they think. These are the states of mind and the changes in perception that I love to work on with you. Because if you can change the way you see there, you can change the way you see everywhere. And you get more truth when you change the way you see. We tend to see in a narrow, kind of symbolized way, when there's so much more detail and so much more nuance. I heard a quote once that said, intelligence craves diversity. Was that the word? We want nuance, dynamic, contrast. We're here to touch, to feel, to taste, to sense variety. That's what it is. Intelligence craves variety. Perhaps that was the... So, in life, in drawing, don't be afraid of the shadows. And, okay, no, that's fine. Be afraid. It's okay. Be afraid. Sometimes, like, you want to skip that feeling. Well, for a change, don't skip the feeling. Feel it. Wow, I'm scared. Let me just take that all in. Whoo, scary. Yeah, come on, fear. Let it come, let it come, let it come. You'll find it only has so much momentum. And then it's you again, coming back with, let's do this. Let's do this. The fear isn't an end point. It's a feeling. So, if you're especially when you're in a safe, friendly, playful place, what's to fear? You can take those risks because you're playing. You don't have to guarantee a perfect outcome. Who wants perfect? Yeah, we want to have an experience. This is a lot of this is coming out of my client call this morning. She's like, wow, you know what? I've been so perfectionist all this time. She's like, I want to be in the process. That's what I want. I said, yes, that's what you want. And you can play with the concept of, okay, what if it all came, right now, all of it, everything I ever wanted was here now. There was no process. There was no reaching or stretching. What if? Like, part of you may realize, well, I'm enjoying this process. I'm enjoying being, and I'm enjoying creating and growing. And that shadow stuff, don't underestimate the shadow, because shadow gives depth. Shadow gives definition. Shadow gives movement and variety. Shadows give it the roundedness, not just light. Everything has a light aspect and a shadow aspect. And if you only have sweet flavors, sweet doesn't contrast with anything. If you only have sweet flavors, you start to get sick of sweet. You need some bitter, you need some sour, you want some crunch, you want some soft. Shadows are the variety. And in your life, your shadows, this is the biggest lesson, and I'm just probably going to be talking about this a lot all year because I've had so many discoveries this year about it. The parts of you that you tucked away because they were undesirable to you, undesirable to those around you, undesirable to your boss, to your teacher, to whatever. Put them away. They have a light aspect too. They have a positive aspect. They serve you. All the parts of you serve you. So especially when we come to art, especially fashion, people in fashion are very much drawn to beauty and often a sense of like perfection. And then that's what ends up biting them, the perfection. But it's okay because then we get to heal. It calls you up to healing. Art in general, a lot of art people, they're very hard on themselves. How is that serving you? And yeah, that's the light aspect. How is that serving you? That can often, push you to keep growing. how is that not serving you? Talking bad about yourself, like you wouldn't let someone else talk to you that way. So dancing with the shadows, playing with the shadows and diving into them, taking the risk to mix the dark with the light, to know that they have a dance. It's a yin and a yang. It's a masculine and a feminine. It's a solid and a fluid. That's a whole experience. It's a whole person. It's a whole design. When you work with me, the thing that always comes up with me, like the demonstrations are all there. How to do this, how to do that, do this exercise, try this exercise, design this collection, da da da. But when we talk one-on-one, like with my coaching clients in Year of Fashion, what usually comes up is the broken bits, the parts of yourself that you will not accept. We start to get clear. Why? What do you think is wrong here? Because it's a belief, and it's not a fact, and it's not a truth. We're always coming back to your whole self. What comes out from your wholeness? What is your truth? Other humans are the best mirrors we have. I'm here to reflect, to help you hear what you're saying, help you see what you're already seeing, and your artwork, your creations are also a mirror. So if your drawing comes up and you start attacking it, you start to see the ways in which you attack yourself and the perceptions you have about yourself that you think are wrong or bad. And we get to kind of just unpack those. And when you look at the shadows, they dissipate so easily. The shadows, the traumas, the pains are so heavy to carry and so light to release. Is amazing. It's amazing because it doesn't make sense in the linear way we think. If I carried this for 20 years, how can I put it down in a second? Sometimes you'll find that your story about what you can or can't do, who you are or aren't, has become your whole identity. So when you finally get to that moment where you can put it down, release a limiting belief, sometimes you will start to notice that you're holding on tight to that limiting belief, even if it's, I can't do this. Because being disempowered, it has become your identity, or feeling victim becomes an identity. You're like, if I put this down, I'm not even sure if I exist anymore. I've had this experience. I don't know if any of you have. Share, please. But yeah. But the thing is it's not true. You don't disappear. It's the ego fears death because the ego knows that it doesn't really exist. And your truth is, if you can clear out some of this cloggy stuff, your truth just starts to flow. You become an open channel for yourself, for your truth. You stop cutting it off because you think something about you needs to be corrected, something about you is wrong, something about you is that's the beautiful thing about being an adult. A lot of the pains that were this is going to be a separate reading, inner child. A lot of the things that came up that you learned when you were very small in a disempowered state because you were truly reliant on the people who take care of you, never came up for question again. You kind of take them as some kind of gospel truth that you need correction, that you are inconvenient, that you're doing it wrong, that you need permission, da da da. Believe it or not, you could be 55, 75 and still be operating at that 7-year-old level. And I don't even like to say that because I think our culture and our society talks about children as if they are less than. There's nothing less than about a child. Being a 7-year-old is amazing. I'm only talking about the aspect of you that took on a belief about yourself from being in a disempowered state that started to learn that you were disempowered, because you're not. And sometimes being victim or disempowered seems more like we have more power from being a victim than we could have by being in our power. But the minute you decide that's not true anymore, it's not true anymore. And you can decide that in an instant. Any day, anytime, any moment, you can make that choice, that decision. Course in Miracles, I think, says, that you choose again. You chose victim, you chose... And it's not that we want to feel that way, but trauma does that to us. And I think we all have gone through it. In a traumatic moment, you become disempowered, victimized, and then you kind of hold on to that identity. But you have the option and the choice to release that identity in a moment, because your truth is always empowered. And sometimes we need to retreat. We need to cocoon. We need to pull in. We need to recover. We need to feel something painful. So there's a time and a place for everything. But when you start calling for empowerment, when you start feeling the call, it's yours. And anything you feel called to from your heart of hearts, and you can get quiet and get clear with this, but just listening and trusting yourself, it's yours. There may be some process, but on the most important level, you need to know that it is already yours. You have asked, and it is yours in the asking. And then you have to allow yourself to receive. Because if your identity is disempowerment or victimhood, you will not let something in. And that's all I have to say.
Bye.
I hope that was helpful. Bye, sweetheart. You're going to work?
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you.
Bye.
I'm gonna work.
I'm not sure that went exactly. See, I wanted to give this talk this morning when it was like on the tip of my tongue, but I had to go to an appointment. But I'm convinced that something came across here for someone who needed it, because if you're in that place, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If it provokes questions in you, that's good too. And I know that I said what I needed to say because I was called to. I have that trust. I have that faith. I would rather say it not so well than not speak at all. And I have faith that because I've asked, every time I share, it's going to become clearer. And the feedback I get from you will remind me that it does matter to share my voice, that it is serving as is meant to serve. And after 7 years, 30 years of teaching fashion, but years of making like demonstration videos, how to draw sparkles, how to draw glitter, how to draw gathers. That's just the little nuts and bolts. The foundation is who you are, who you feel you are in the world. And a fashion school, in my experience, taught me skills, but what it taught me about who I am in a system was something I'm still healing. So why do we have so many sweatshops in fashion industry? You can't create that without creating that within. And I feel that that's what I learned in the industry. Fernando, tudo bem? You learn sweatshop mentality in university, and then you go out into an industry and perpetuate sweatshop. That's not what we want. If you're not learning in a place that honors the whole individual, your voice, that cares for you, where you are encouraged to care for yourself, you will not create a world like that. You don't want to live that way. So all this talk lately, as fashion is one of the biggest slavery spaces on the planet, the fashion industry, the textile industry. And so if a fashion school, as students, I know we were like, rip it out, do it again, don't sleep, it's never good enough, competition, rah, 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 rah. How does someone educate that way, be educated that way, and then go out into the professional world caring about everybody? It has to start here and then reflect out there. So maybe there are people who went to fashion schools who never experienced that. But to me, I think it's the culture I experienced as a student was that. And then I got into an industry that just horrified me. And the funniest thing is, and it's not funny, that people who come to study fashion are often coming from that place of full inspiration and love and beauty and play. Like that little girl who's dressing up, that little boy who's making clothes for his dolls. Expression, color, joy, beauty, adornment, service, functionality, creativity, clothing, craft. And then by the time you get processed by this university, you're like, robot, corporate, machine. I don't mean to make such a bleak, because it's not bleak. Because when you are whole in here, it's whole out there. So it's not bleak. Just don't wait for someone else to give you permission and tell you how to do it. Come from within, coming from your source, coming from solid with yourself. And I think that's my message. Sometimes these concepts are so clear and the words but I hope you got me. And I hope you create something today with joy, without judgment. I hope today and every day you access your state of play. And that play does not have to win or lose out among seriousness and the sophistication. Play is as serious and as sophisticated as you can get. The play state is love. And this is what we need. Access your play state. We all have this inner knowing. When you're in that state, you can work like a non-stop for days, because it's not work. It's what you were born to do. It's what you are called to do. It's divinely inspired and not unavoidable, undeniable. And that's your birthright. You think you didn't come here for a reason? You came here for a reason, and you know it. And people kept telling you, and you got to keep coming back to your knowing. Your DNA, your unique individual voice, is the most universal one. It's that great paradox. The more highly selfish and personalized it is, the more universal it is. So be you. Be beautiful. I hope this talk inspired you. I love you. Thanks for being with me, and we'll talk soon. Bye. What?